Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for attending the 6th annual Be the Change event. You have Molly Broman here with your BYUC team. I will be your facilitator for our next session, Medication Through Movement, the Benefits of Tai Chi. Our host is Derek Johnson, Senior Acupuncture Therapist in Tai Chi and Medical Qigong Instructor. Derek provides Chinese medicine services with the UC Osher Center for Integrative Health. His field of practice includes meditation, Tai Chi, and Qigong. Additionally, Derek teaches 2 courses for the center at the UC College of Medicine, Intro to Traditional Chinese Medicine and Acupuncture, and new in spring 2024, Tai Chi Basics, Medication Through Movement. Before we get started, if this is your first session with us, we have a couple important reminders to share. Please make sure your first and last name are updated here in Zoom. We will be raffling 10 Max Buzz activity trackers per session today. This is an exciting way to experience the new Virgin Pulse Wellness Portal. Winners will be randomly selected and notified after the event. This session will be recorded and available with captions after the event. If you would like to view the live transcript, you can click the live transcripts button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If live transcripts are already appearing on your screen and you'd like to turn them off, you can do so within the settings tab. There will be time at the end of each presentation for questions. We do encourage you to ask your questions via the chat throughout the session. If time does limit the Q&A, contact information will be posted on the event's Bearcat Landing intranet page after the event. The UC Benefits and BYUC team will send an email after the event with some reminders about BYUC points opportunities. Again, approved session materials and recordings will be available on the event's Bearcats landing page after the event. Now I'll hand the virtual mic over to Derek as he'll start Medication Through Movement.
All right. Can everybody hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. Well, welcome everybody to our little discussion today on Tai Chi and a little bit of Chinese medicine. Thank you for the introduction, Molly. So I don't have to introduce myself too much. We can pretty much dive right in. So we only have 45 minutes today to go through some material and to go through some experiential movement. So we're going to pretty much dive in and we're just going to touch on a few things, but I think it's pretty important to go through a few of these things of information. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so I can start our, there we go. So maybe you can see me, maybe you can't, but really it's mostly the PowerPoint that I want you guys to be able to see. So this image is actually from several weeks ago. We had a really nice big event out in Alt Park, and we had over 100 people come and do some experiential with Tai Chi, yoga, walking meditation, and then there was a big sound immersion therapy experience at the end, which was really nice. So we're just going to dive right in, and we're going to talk about the elephant in the room, which is Qi. So I don't always go into this with a lot of my patients or when we're doing talks on this, just because it's such a deep concept and such a widely misunderstood concept, I think. But when we're talking about Tai Chi and we're talking about things like Qigong and this energetic medicine, I think you do have to touch on this a little bit. So briefly, we're going to go over this a little. So Qi is often translated as energy, which is not really great translation for it. There isn't a very good translation for it. One I like to use is vitality. And another misunderstanding or conceptual way people think about it is they think about it like the Force, or they just think from Star Wars, or they say, oh, it's in all things. And it has this very spiritual context is what people tend to use, and very mystical context. But in actual practice, and especially in Chinese medicine, we like to talk about it in a little more depth than that. So yes, it's in all things, but importantly, it exists in different states of density, and it's always in flux. So it's not just this, spiritual connection between everybody, but there's these physiological functions that we see in Chinese medicine. So for example, it has functions of transforming, transporting, holding things, raising things, or lifting things in the body, protecting, and also warming. So it's not just this one thing, this one thread of connection, but it has a lot of these functions. And in Qigong and in Tai Chi, it's not necessarily vital that you exactly dive into being a scholar of what Qi is. But I think being aware of it, because while we're practicing, Qi is something we're trying to connect to, right? And we're trying to balance. And that I'll get into is the core concepts of Tai Chi and Qigong is balance and connection, okay? So we'll move on and we'll play with that a little bit. We'll play with the Qi a little bit. So of course, it's hard to talk about Tai Chi without talking about something called Qigong. Qigong translates to basically Qi work, or Qi cultivation, or energy work, or vitality cultivation, however you want to define it. It is first mentioned over 2,200 years ago in a book called the Huangdi Neijing, which is the book of one of the first, well, the first really big books on Chinese medicine. And in it, it was actually called Daoyin. Qigong is a more recent term that's used to talk about it, but it was referred to as Daoyin, which translates to guide and pull or lead. And in context, this means to guide and to lead or pull the body's qi through motion and stillness. So that's through motion, to actually doing movements, but also through seated meditation or standing meditation. So that's where the stillness is. And in the classics, it is said that the qi follows the mind. So where your mind is, that's where your body's qi and your resources are going. And Qigong combines stretching, massages, self-massage, and you do that through also breathing, not just physical massage, but you massage the interior with breathing. And this is all done to promote and to balance that qi flowing through the body. But really, Qigong, even though it was mentioned in this book 2,200 years ago, it is thought to be at least 4,500 years, probably older, and primarily today practiced in two ways. One is called Neigong, which is more internal, referred to as soft and alchemical, just means in this inner cultivation. And then Weigong, which means external, more hard physical movements. And that would include things that you would think about in martial arts. Okay, so now moving on to Tai Chi. So Tai Chi is actually one of the more recent arts in this, much more recent than Qigong, roughly, hard to pin down, but roughly 1700s. Translates to supreme ultimate. It just means something very important and very big. It's practiced usually in primarily two ways. Usually when people say Tai Chi, they're really more associating it with wellness and cultivation and balance and nice stuff, right? When people call it Tai Chi Chuan, which is the full name, they're usually referring more to that stuff, but also bringing in martial application, because there are martial, or as in self-defense or fighting applications to a lot of these movements, and where it really comes from, which is that it is said that it came from the creator, who is Zhang Sanfeng, observing a struggle or a fight between a crane and a snake. And he was already a martial artist, so he's looking and he's watching these movements, and he noticed that when the crane would strike, the snake would yield, evading the attack, and then being able to then come back and attack after that initial attack by the crane. So it's really overcoming this brute force and brute striking and size with softness and with yielding, and then almost like accepting that energy and bringing it back into the a different strike from the snake. So modern practices include many different what are called family or traditional styles and sequences. You can look into this if you want. The primary one or the most popular one is from the Yang family. So usually when you're seeing Tai Chi in the park, or you're watching videos or in the media, it's usually one of these Yang family styles or forms. And as I said, the main core concept is balance. But when people think balance, they think, balancing on one leg or not falling, which that is part of it. But really, it's balance in all interpretations. So the way I describe it is up and down, left and right, left lower and right upper. So we're really talking about balance of everything, but also interior and exterior. And one of the main ways that you work on balance is this other core concept, which is connection. So it's balance through connection. And also if you bring in Chinese medicine to it and what we're talking about in circulation and flow, if you're not connected or you have disconnections, then you can't have full, efficient, and healthy flow through the body. So that's one of the really powerful strengths about Tai Chi and Qigong, especially Tai Chi, because it is this whole body movement. So it's not just we're moving one body, we're working out the bicep, then we're working out this bicep, now we're working the triceps. That's very individualized and segmented, but it's whole body movement together, everything starting and stopping together, and feeling that a movement coming from a foot into a hand and then coming back down maybe into the other foot and then going out into the other hand, feeling movement going from the bottom of the spine to the top and then back down and then into the ground, all these different connections and circulations that we work to balancing that whole system together. So continuing on, there's a really great researcher, Dr. Peter Wayne out at Harvard, who has done a ton of research over the past, 15, 20 years amongst other colleagues of his. And he came up with this thing called 8 Active Ingredients. He wrote a book on it. This is the book here, so I always highly recommend this. But he talks about these 8 active ingredients of Tai Chi to be focusing on as you're learning and as you're practicing it. So these are also just benefits of it too. So awareness, so that's where your mind is. As I said, the mind directs the body's resources or the Qi. So focusing the mind and putting the mind into the body, being aware internally, which also therefore makes you more aware externally. Intention, again, focusing that mind and having a goal for the practice and leading those resources where you want them to go for that current practice that you're doing. Structural integration, that's again further that connection and that balancing. Active relaxation, which is kind of an interesting concept. You think activity as doing things physically, but there's also active relaxation. Okay, so that's where your goal, your intention is that relaxation, but you are in that moment and you are doing things internally as you are relaxed as well and opening up those connections. Strengthening and flexibility, which of course comes from doing these physical movements. Depending on what system and style you're doing and why you're doing it, will determine how complex and how difficult these movements can be. And that's where that, what style, what system should I do? Well, you need to do the style and system that you need to do that works for you. So if you need to build up leg strength, if you need to build up balance, then you need to work towards doing some of the more challenging movements, some of the more challenging styles, because that is going to be what you get out of it. If you don't do that and you do some of these softer styles, less complex, less, maybe bending down deeper, then you're not quite going to get as much out of it in that context. So that's something to think about as you're determining what you should be practicing. Natural, freer breath. So there is a breathing component and you want it to feel natural as in not labored. And you want it to feel easier, yeah? And we'll do some of that in a few minutes. Social support, this is part of the community of Tai Chi. So of course, you don't necessarily want to be learning this from a book. You don't want to just be looking at a YouTube video and trying to figure it out yourself. Yes, you can probably pick a few things up. Yes, you could probably get some benefit out of that, but you're going to miss a lot of this social community and support. And it's always funny because whenever I start a new group or I go into another group, there's always a very similar lighthearted and fun and just excited and connected group of people from all different kinds of backgrounds. And this is kind of a universal language that people learn to speak. And then they're always looking forward to coming to class, and you come in and, I'm setting up the room and you have all the people like socializing in the corner and talking about what they're doing in their day and just all these really interesting conversations that otherwise wouldn't really exist, especially if you're doing this from a YouTube video or a book. So that's a really important element to the Tai Chi. And then this concept of embodied spirituality. So I don't always go into the spiritual element of this because for some people that can be a little bit of a touchy subject, but I think it's hard to ignore that you start to connect so much internally. And there's this concept in Chinese medicine and other philosophies of the microcosm and the macrocosm. So the deeper internally you go, the deeper externally you expand and open. And I think for a lot of people that feels very spiritual. And for a lot of people, that is kind of the definition of spirituality. So embodied spirituality is this through this movement and through practicing these Tai Chi forms and this connection to other people and diving deeper and really feeling this movement and experiencing it and practicing it on a daily basis, especially, you start to connect to this other thing that some people might call spirituality, some people might call something else, but it's definitely undeniable that you get to that and it is a thing and it is there and it is really nice. So moving on to some benefits of Tai Chi. So I was at a conference a few weeks ago and there was some really great research presented. So again, we could talk about this for many hours, but I would just want to briefly touch on this so we can do a little bit of movement. So some of the things I pulled out of some of the presentations, so some of the demonstrated benefits, which means researched and data collected and presented in papers and journals and at conferences like this one, is that Tai Chi promotes relaxation and decreases the sympathetic nervous system output. So those are the stressors. The sympathetic nervous system is that fight or flight. So it starts to decrease that output of those chemicals and that neurological response that sets you on edge. A lot of people most of the day and even into the night as they're trying to sleep, which is what wakes them up and disturbs their sleep. It reduces somatic symptoms, things like pain, weakness, balance, and benefits anxiety, depression, blood pressure. It reduces stress hormones in the body, and these are things that are measured and collected. Reverses cellular breakdown from the aging process. And studies also suggest that it increases relaxation and attentiveness. So not just feeling, people do their practice and they feel nice and relaxed and a little light and floaty, but you're also alert. So it's not like you get a buzz and you're just off in la la land, but you have that awareness that we talked about in those active ingredients of Tai Chi. So as Molly talked about in the opening, and we want to highlight here, so I do teach at the College of Medicine here, which is, anybody can take this. We have a certificate, a master's level certificate in integrative medicine. So not just my classes, but there's all different kinds of things with culinary, functional medicine, and other things in yoga that we're adding into the curriculum. So the first one that I've been teaching for, I think I'm in my 4th semester, is this intro to traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture. And so far that's been offered every semester, and that is all online. So you go at your own pace weekly, and there's lectures, there's readings, it's a lot of information, just touching on the surface of Chinese medicine and acupuncture, just so you can get an understanding. I'm always asked about that from my patients, and rather than sending them these big long books, this would be a great way to just start to get that basic understanding there. And then starting in January in the spring, we are doing an in-person Tai Chi hybrid class. So that's an hour a week where we all get together, and I'll be teaching a specific form that will be progressing everyone together, which I'm excited about. But then there's also going to be some online readings and presentations and videos to go more into the philosophy and application and some of the science behind what you're actually doing. So I am going to attempt to stop sharing my screen here. Maybe come back. Molly, I don't know if you can override me here and turn off my screen sharing.
1 second, let me try.
I haven't used Zoom in forever. Okay. And then I should be able to maybe highlight my video.
I got you there.
All right. Okay. Looks like we're doing pretty good. We've got about a little over 20 minutes to have some fun. So I will suggest, if you're not already sitting down, to just go ahead and have a seat, because we'll just do a little orientation here. So what we'll have you do is just get to the front of your chair, not necessarily the edge. I don't want anybody slipping off the front of their chair. So just where you're nice and comfortable, do your best to straighten your back a little bit. You can allow your hands to relax on your knees. You can put them in your lap, right hand under the left hand if you want, or you can have them palms up, just whatever's comfortable. And just notice your feet and try to get those flat on the ground and comfortable, noticing that light weight of the feet since you're not standing, gently pressing down onto the ground. And all we're doing is bringing that awareness to where you're sitting, the room you're in, feeling those feet gently pressing against the floor, and just doing a quick check-in through the body, and not necessarily trying to do anything, trying to feel or relax or force anything, just noticing, just taking in information. And as you feel a little more comfortable, just bringing your attention into your lower abdomen. This will be a few inches below your belly button and a few inches inside the abdomen. And imagining in your mind like there's a balloon in that area. And we'll do a nice gentle inhale, and you want to feel the energetic of that breath pouring down into that balloon, almost like a water balloon, and then it expands with that energy of the air in all directions. As that slows down, you want to think about letting go or releasing that balloon, which will then collapse as the abdomen and the low back and sides also collapse, as that air becomes a lot lighter and comes up and out. And do this whichever way feels comfortable for you. If you can do it breathing in through the nose and expanding that abdomen, and then releasing out the mouth, that's great. If that doesn't feel comfortable for you, do whatever does feel comfortable. And as you're doing this little breathing exercise, we want to avoid holding the breath. We want to avoid forcing the breath. So a lot of people say breathe slowly. Okay, what does that mean? Well, breathe deeply. Well, what does that mean? What we really want you to do is we want to think about this lower abdomen and allow that to expand. And this is done through relaxation. You don't want to use any muscles or force to push that abdomen out. It's more about moving out of the way and allowing that energetic breath dropping down to expand and fill all those spaces. And when it feels full, and maybe even before it feels uncomfortable, especially, that's when you want to release and let go and allow that breath to then come up and out as that balloon and your abdomen together collapse. And that's also done through relaxation. So we're opening to receive that breath and expand, and then we're releasing to allow that to collapse and for the breath to come out. If it feels comfortable, we want to work towards equalizing this inhale and exhale. So that means if you're counting, which is a good tool to use as you're doing breathing techniques, because it can focus your mind, you want to count about the same amount of duration for that inhale as you count for the exhale. So for you, that's 4 seconds on your inhale, Again, we avoid that holding. We want to move directly into the release, and then also count 4 seconds for the exhale. And as that slows down, before it feels uncomfortable, we want to open back up to receive. So comfort is really key here. A lot of times people can get uncomfortable as they're doing breathing. Often that's because they're not getting enough breath, or they're taking too long to exhale or inhale. And this can trigger some stress. So we want you to be comfortable. Whatever duration of time for that inhale and the exhale is okay. That's where you are right now. There's no need to push it at this point. So as we continue with that gentle inhale and exhale, we can bring our attention back into the bottom of the feet. And we want to do what we call a grounding technique. Very simple. We just imagine what a tree looks like, thinking about how it touches the ground. And then as if we start to have this X-ray vision, we start to look into the ground beneath the tree, and we can start to see this vast network of roots extending down into the ground, connecting it and structurally making it more balanced and sound. Straight down, but also out to the sides in all directions, where it gets its nourishment. And then start to think about the bottoms of the feet doing that same thing. Feeling yourself extend straight down into the ground, sinking in, and then also out, extending out in all directions as far as you want, as far as you feel comfortable. And we're paying attention to our breathing, we're paying attention to our body, even our mind, and how this imagery starts to feel, how it starts to shift things. Some people like to connect this extension of roots with their breath. So they might think about breathing in nice and gently, and then as they exhale, they might feel themselves sink lower, or they might feel themselves extend deeper into the ground. And as I said, this is all working towards feeling and being what we call more grounded or connected or rooted. And you can just take a moment to feel that connection, especially trying to feel that going up the legs and into that lower abdomen, and feeling that expansion of that balloon as you do your gentle inhale and exhale, further strengthening that connection into those roots and into the ground. And this is a great exercise you can do anywhere. You don't even have to have your feet on the ground. You can do it in an airplane. You can do it upside down. You can do it lying on the bed. Sometimes you might wake up in the middle of the night. A lot of people do, having some anxiety, having some stress. Maybe you're thinking about an assignment that's due tomorrow, or somebody really stressed you out and you got to see them tomorrow. And what are you going to say? You can go into this practice of this lower abdominal breath and then extending those roots. As I said, you don't even have to have the feet on the ground. You can think about those trees that get upended by a rock, or they might be growing in weird angles. And you can see sometimes they'll grow these roots around obstacles and then back down into the ground. We have that same ability with this energetic rooting that we do. So if you wake up in the middle of the night and it's hard to go back to sleep, you can orient your mind into this breathing and then start to feel that extension and then start to feel that connection, and just really work on that breathing and that connection. You might even start to feel like as you breathe in, not only are you pulling this energetic breath down into the abdomen, but you might be pulling up some nice refreshing energy from the roots into that lower abdomen. And then as you exhale, you might be sending out some of those fears or some of those thoughts, or just tired energy, creating almost like this dialysis system of filtration of your thoughts and of your body's chi, if you want to call it that. And then before you know it, you might be right back to sleep. And that can be just one way of using a simple technique like that. You could also do it at work. Take a bathroom break, take a walk, go outside, go wherever, and do just a couple minutes of this breathing and grounding. And you might be surprised at how calm you can get. And if you do this incrementally throughout the day, even for a couple minutes at a time, you can really work on bringing, as we talked about, those stress neurological responses and chemicals circulating in the body, bringing those down, tamping them down throughout the day. So then when you're back at home, instead of being at a 10 with your stress, maybe you're only at a 6, and that can have some really strong benefits over time. So that said, for those of you who are able to, we want to have you stand up and just give yourself a little bit of room. If there's any balance issues, I encourage you to stay seated for this, or at the very least, have a chair or a table or something stabilizing by you. Of course, because I can't see anybody and we're doing this virtually, I don't know where people are, and I don't know if somebody has an issue with their balance. So we want to avoid any kind of accidents, and everybody knows themselves the best. So if you can stand balanced and comfortable, then let's have you do that. If not, I would rather you stay seated for this part. You can still follow along with our movements and still get a lot out of it. You don't have to be standing to do this. Also along those lines, there should never be any pain or discomfort as you're practicing these movements. So that can come from if you have any injuries, any kind of issues in the joints where certain movements hurt. We don't want you to do those movements. So if, for example, we're lifting an arm, okay, and if we were to go all the way up here, but you can't lift your arm above this height, we do not want you going past that. We don't want you to struggle and go through it. So everyone knows the concept, no pain, no gain. Well, one of my teachers like to say, no pain, no pain. All right. So let's keep it no pain. Let's keep it nice and comfortable. Modifying movement does not mean that you're not getting the benefit of the movement. So even if you're doing, even if I want you to do something nice and big like this, where we're lifting and coming down over the head, if you can only modify it to about here, that is okay. All right. We don't want you forcing through pain through movement to do this. You're not going to get any benefit outside of increasing stressors in the body and hurting and potentially even hurting yourself further, which we do not want you to do. As long as your mind and your intention is there, as we talked about in the presentation, and that extension is happening in your mind, then you are still getting that full benefit, even if you're modifying it, from the looks to about 50%. You're getting 100% of that benefit, not 50%. Okay? Safety first. So we're just going to have a little fun. As I talked about, we were talking a little bit about chi. Yes. So what we're going to do, I'm going to come a little closer so we can see. Just have the feet about shoulder width stance. All right. So not too wide and not too narrow. We want it to be comfortable. And we're going to have a slight knee bend. Okay. So we're not dropping down to do a deep squat. We're just coming down a little bit, almost like there is a stool right behind you, and you're just putting your weight onto it. Okay. So we're not going too deep. We're just bending slightly. And this is along with that concept of connectedness, where we want to pretty much never have during these exercises and throughout the day, usually a locked joint or a fully straight joint, because the saying is if you lock, you block. So when you lock a joint, you're reducing that circulation through that joint. And the whole point of these exercises is that we want to open and we want to encourage free flow of all the fluids and electricity and energy and neural communication going through the body. So if you lock or if you crimp down on a joint, that's going to slow that connection and slow that circulation. So we want to open. So that slight knee bend. And we're going to take our hands, keeping our elbows and our shoulders down. We're just going to point the palms toward each other. Okay. We want to relax the fingers. Sometimes when people do this, their thumbs are way up and their fingers are like, okay. So just allow them to become soft. All right. Nice and soft. So then in your mind, you can even look down between your palms and just start to imagine like you have this energetic ball between the palms. So it's a sphere. You can think about a beach ball, a soccer ball, or something, but whatever imagery helps you start to think about and see this energetic ball. And your hands are holding it, so they're at the borders. And what I'm going to have you do is just slowly bring those hands closer. Okay, and then we're going to slowly pull them apart. And what I want you to do is continue to imagine that ball and then start to feel the exterior, feel the borders of it. Okay, so on your own, just bring it a little closer until you start to feel a little bit of a rebound. You start to feel a border. Okay, and then pull the hands apart once you feel that and see if it's still there. So it might start to feel a little spongy. Okay. And maybe you might even notice as you start to pull your hands apart, it starts to grow. It follows the hands. So where maybe you felt the border with the hands 6 inches apart roughly, maybe now you're feeling it more like a foot apart. Okay. And this should be fun. This should be curious. This is like we're doing a little science experiment. We're just feeling, we're collecting data, and then you can start to expand the hands even further and see where those borders can extend to. Maybe you can start to expand outside the width of the body. You start to feel, oh, there it is, yeah. Okay. Then even coming closer, see if you can shrink that ball again. Maybe you can start moving the hands around, not just right here in front, but maybe along the sides, and see if you still feel, maybe, whoa, you like turn the hands a little bit and you feel like the ball just starts to expand on its own. Okay. Try the other side. So now that we're starting to play with this a little bit, and hopefully everybody's starting to feel at least a little bit of something weird going on, all right? We're going to bring the hands a little closer together. And then we're going to drop the hands down in front of that area that we talked about where that balloon was. Okay. And we're going to do that same thing. We're going to really try to feel that energetic ball down here. And now we're going to combine a little movement with breath, okay? So thinking about that energetic ball in your hands, but also thinking about the energetic balloon in that lower abdomen. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a nice gentle breath into that lower abdomen, which expands the abdomen, but then also expands that energetic ball. So the arms expand, opening in front, opening the chest. And then as you exhale, you release, that hands will come back. Nice gentle inhale, and that ball expands in the hands, but also in the abdomen. And then release. And they come back in front here. So you can do this on your own. You don't have to match my pace. Nice gentle breaths, really noticing what's happening. Maybe the arms and the hands are now moving on their own from that balloon. So it's not that you're using your force or using your muscle to move that arm, but it starts to feel like something's pushing on the palms and moving your hands for you. So we're going to pause here in the middle, so keeping the hands down here. Then what we're going to do is we're going to keep those elbows down, and we're going to turn the palms down, so facing the ground. And we're just going to drop the hands a little bit. And what we're going to do is we're going to do another breath in. And very similarly, even though the hands aren't facing each other, we're going to think about almost like you have these two energetic balls, one underneath each palm. And as you breathe in and as you expand that lower abdomen, it's going to lift these hands up. And then as you breathe out and release, drop the hands and have them come right back down. So if it helps, you can think about filling those balloons up underneath the palms with helium, right? So helium balloons float, and then you poke a hole in them, and as they deflate, your hands drop. And if you're standing and if you feel comfortable as you're doing this, we can straighten the knees a little bit as we breathe in and lift the hands up. And then we can bend the knees again as the hands drop. And again, straightening and lifting and breathing in. And then breathing out, releasing and dropping down. Again, hopefully you start to feel the same sensation you were feeling when you were doing it with the hands going to the side, where it starts to feel almost effortless, almost like the hands are starting to float up all on their own. And then release nice and slowly down. Good. So then we're going to keep the knees slightly bent, and let's bring our hands back up in front, and we're going to bring them up to the chest area again. Okay. So we're going to do a little bit of a modified version of something called brush knee push. Okay, so what we're going to do, don't worry so much about what side, because for some people my camera is going to be flipped, for others it's going to be not flipped. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to pick a hand and we're going to allow it to drop. Okay, and as we do that, whatever hand, so this is a rule here, whatever hand is dropping, you're going to turn a little bit to that side. As you drop and turn to that side, you're going to take your other hand and you're just going to extend it straight out, like you're reaching for something. As we turn back to center, that hand that dropped is going to come back up in front of the chest here. And then we're going to do the same thing now to the opposite side. So whatever hand that didn't do it before, you're going to drop down, and again, you're going to turn to that side, and then you're going to extend and push to the other side. And then we're going to come back as that hand comes back up here. And we're just going to go back and forth. So turn, drop that hand and extend. And then come back, lift that hand back up. And then same thing to the other side. As we do this, we've talked about connection and balance, right? So we want to go nice and slow and gentle, and everything starting and stopping together. So as this drops, you start to turn and this starts to extend. And then they all terminate together. And then they all come back together. If you're able to, you can think about feeling the feet as you're doing this and connecting this movement into all the way down into the feet and into the ground. If not, that's okay. You can just continue to focus more on the upper body. Keeping the hands at or just slightly below shoulder height. And working to keep something called the Tai Chi pole, or the central axis, in alignment. So that's right down the center of the body. And you're just twisting and turning around this pole. Okay. So we're going to do one more. We're going to come back to center. And we're going to do the same thing mostly, but instead of dropping this hand down, what we're actually going to do is we're going to lift by rotating that elbow, turning the palm out, and we're going to turn to that same side. So the same rule applies. That hand is going to determine what side we turn to. We're going to turn and we're going to, again, push with this hand as we do just a little bit of an extension upward with this top hand. Okay. And then we're going to come back to center. And then we'll do the same thing to the other side. So this hand now is going to lift. This hand is going to extend here. And we're going to come back. So these movements are done with rotation. So I'm not lifting my shoulder. As I'm turning, I'm not lifting up, using a lot of force here. It's all just rotation. Okay, the shoulders should pretty much stay at the same level. Okay, so we'll just do a couple more of these, allowing yourself to breathe gently and breathe comfortably. Everything starting and stopping, the left and right sides, working towards balancing those. So if it takes you 3 seconds to do this, it should take you 3 seconds to do this. And together that's 6 seconds. So now to the other side should also take you 6 seconds to do the whole side. And that would apply to those other exercises you're doing. Okay. So now we're going to come back to center here with our ball in front of our chest. And we're just going to drop the hands down. And you always want to check in beginning and at the end of your practice, always wanting to ground at the beginning and check at the end that you're still grounded. Okay. Taking a couple deep breaths, checking in. We want to still feel those energetic roots connected and still feel that groundedness. So those are a few very simple movements you can do in practice. If you can't remember every single thing, do your best to remember whatever you can. And no matter what, as long as you have that gentle breathing, as long as you have that attention, that focus and awareness, if you get it a little bit wrong, it's still better than doing nothing, okay? So putting your mind into that movement, doing that gentle breathing, you could do anything you want. You could just, flop your hands up and down to one side. You could be like a bird and just flop like this, okay? Even if you do that, as long as you have that gentle breathing we talked about, as long as you have that intention and that focus and you're feeling and you're getting that information, then you're applying those Tai Chi principles. And again, that is way better than doing nothing. So I am at my time. I want to thank everybody for joining us who did. Hopefully you guys learned a little bit. Hopefully you got a little bit out of it. If you want to learn more, like I said, we have our courses in the spring that you can take on Chinese medicine, acupuncture, and the in-person Tai Chi. And then we have information abound on our websites. So thank you all for coming.
Yes, echoing what you just said there. Thank you all again for tuning into Medication Through Movement, the benefits of Tai Chi. And again, Derek, thank you for sharing your expertise and your time with us today. Greatly appreciated. I know we have a bunch of thank yous coming through the chat, so echoing that there for you. I am going to put a quick link in the chat before people start signing survey for our Be the Change event. Please share your thoughts with us if you have the quick moment. If not, we will be sending out a reminder over email with the survey, how to log BYUC points, and some additional reminders. Again, all approved materials will be posted on our Bearcats landing page within about a week after this event. But this is our final session for Be the Change 2023. So thank you all so much for tuning in today and yesterday if you were able to join us. And we are looking forward to continuing to be the change with you. Thanks, everyone.